Hey guys, Sean here, welcome to the F1 Word and to my Canadian Grand Prix review. And after all the hype around the race, Canada did not deliver. Very disappointed in the Grand Prix, not going to lie. Although not a huge amount happened, there were a couple of talking points. We'll get onto those in a moment. But first off, let's start as we always do by having a look at our race winner. It was Sebastian Vettel who took victory for Ferrari in Montreal, their first win in Canada since 2004. And to be honest, it was a pretty perfect drive. Very well managed race. Vettel led from start to finish and just had the pace in that Ferrari to fight off any challenge from the Mercedes. Not that there was a lot. Bottas did come for him towards the end of the race, but the German just looked in complete control of the race. It has put him back to the top of the Drivers' Championship as well, a single point clear of Lewis Hamilton. So a big weekend for Ferrari and for Sebastian Vettel, and indeed for the championship race. It is so tight, and I think we've got a season-long battle. Having a look at the rest of the race result, it was Valtteri Bottas in second place over 7 seconds down the road. He did put on a late charge towards the end, but made a mistake whilst coming through traffic. Got it all wrong at turn 1, and that pretty much ended his challenge. But in all honesty, he didn't really have an answer for Vettel. Max Verstappen, a clean weekend, third place and the fastest lap as well. Another one who put on a bit of a late charge but couldn't do anything about it. Daniel Ricciardo in fourth place. Looked a little bit disappointed after the race in some ways, but I think he'll be happy with that. Lewis Hamilton only managed fifth and did not look on the pace this weekend at all, which is a surprise because, as we've said so many times this weekend, it is very much a Hamilton track. Kimi Raikkonen came home in sixth place, a long way off his teammate to be perfectly honest, 27.1 seconds. But he was the last driver on the lead lap. Nico Hülkenberg came home in seventh place, Carlos Sainz in eighth. Very good weekend for Renault. Esteban Ocon picked up a couple of points for Force India, and Charles Leclerc once again in the points for Sauber. Pierre Gasly came home in 11th place ahead of Romain Grosjean. Really good recovery from Grosjean. Kevin Magnussen, his teammate, was just behind him in 13th. Sergio Perez in 14th place. Marcus Ericsson came home 15th. Stoffel Van Dorn, a miserable weekend for McLaren. He only managed 16th. They never really looked competitive in the race, if we're being completely honest. And Sergei Sorokin is the last of the classified finishers in 17th. And your retirements list is Fernando Alonso, Lance Stroll and Brendan Hartley. And that is obviously where we're going to start in terms of talking points. A huge accident on the first lap between Stroll and Hartley. On the run down to turn 5, Hartley was on the outside of Stroll. And as the Canadian got a little snap of oversteer and tried to correct the car, the back end got away. And the two collided, which saw Hartley climbing the wall. It's the only word for it. Landing on the side of Stroll's car and the two of them into the barrier down at the chicane. As I say, a massive crash. Brendan Hartley was taken to hospital for checks and scans after he apparently hit his head on the halo during the impact. Now, usually I do like to record these reviews on a Monday morning, but unfortunately I can't do that this week, so I'm recording it late on Sunday night. And at time of recording, there has been no official word from Toro Rosso, Brendan Hartley or the FIA as to whether or not he did hit his head on the halo. Now, looking at replays, it certainly looks like there's contact, and after the impact, Hartley's hands do immediately go to one side of his head. If that is the case, I really hope the FIA look into this urgently. But until we know for sure what's happened, I'm not going to speculate or throw too much opinion on it. But the most important thing about it all is that both drivers are okay. Inevitably, after an accident like that, the question is always asked, who is to blame? As I said in the race debrief, if I had to blame somebody, I would put it at Stroll's door, because at the end of the day, it's him effectively making the mistake with that snap of oversteer and losing the rear end. And yes, of course, there are some people saying that Hartley shouldn't have been on the outside. But it's the first lap of the race. They are there to race. And of course he's going to be on the outside. Esteban Ocon, just up the road, pulled the same move on Hülkenberg. But Hülkenberg had the sense to back out of that, knowing that it's the first lap of the race and there's no need to take that risk. It was deemed a racing incident by the stewards, and I kind of understand why. You know, first lap, drivers side by side. It was the oversteer that caused Stroll to lose the car, so they're probably looking at it from that perspective. Which, you know, I guess you could say is fair enough. But given how big the accident was, and looking at what the FIA have done in the past with big accidents, I am surprised that they didn't put the blame at somebody's door. Whilst we're talking about racing incidents, another one was between Sergio Perez and Carlos Sainz. Perez went to overtake Carlos Sainz into turn 1 as he turned in, the two collided. That put the Mexican into a spin. He wasn't happy about it. He actually wanted Sainz black flagged. But having looked at a number of angles, there is nothing in that. The stewards deemed it a racing incident. 100% agree. And to be perfectly honest, in terms of race action, that was pretty much it. There was a little bit of squabbling in the midfield, not a huge amount of overtakes at all. Very disappointing, as I said at the start of the video. You know, this is a race I look forward to every year, and I was bitterly disappointed with it. And I think what kind of confirms the lack of action is that one of the biggest talking points of the day was that the checkered flag was thrown early. Model Winnie Harlow was given the honour of waving the checkered flag at the end of the Grand Prix, but waved it a lap too early. Some people have criticised her for this, but as I said in the race debrief, it's not like she stood there, fingers and toes, counting the laps down. Somebody's given her the flag, obviously, and said, wave it now. So I don't think she can be blamed for that at all. What that did mean, though, that instead of having a 70-lap race, the race was classified at lap 68, which meant that Daniel Ricciardo, who had set the fastest lap towards the end of the Grand Prix, lost that honour, if you like, to his teammate Max Verstappen. So Sebastian Vettel got the official driver of the day, and I agree with that one. The way he controlled the race was spot on, and he totally deserves it. But if I had to give it to another driver, I would give it to Charles Leclerc. Once again, in the points in that Sauber, he had a great scrap with Fernando Alonso during the race, before the Spaniard retired. And to be honest, as we saw in qualifying, he's pretty much had the pace throughout the weekend. So it's not like it was any kind of fluke result. Just a very good race all round, finished well ahead of his teammate again. Quite frankly, I think he's got the Swede in his pocket this season. But other honourable mentions, I think both the Renault boys, in fact Renault as a team this weekend, deserve a lot of credit for their performance. Big step forward, as I said earlier, and a nice haul of points as well towards that 4th place in the Constructors. And although he didn't score points, I think Grosjean's recovery was fairly strong, managed to finish ahead of his teammate as well. Before I go though, let's have a look at the championship table, starting with the top 10 in the drivers. Sebastian Vettel is back on top, 1 point clear of Lewis Hamilton. Valtteri Bottas closing the gap on his teammate, he's on 86 points. Daniel Ricciardo slips to 4th on 84. Kimi Raikkonen in 5th, Max Verstappen 6th. Fernando Alonso remains 7th despite a disappointing weekend, but is tied on points with Hülkenberg in 8th. Carlos Sainz sits in 9th place, and Kevin Magnussen rounds out the top 10, still with 19 points on the board. In the Constructors' Championship, very much becoming a 2-horse race, Mercedes are top on 206 points. Ferrari 2nd, Red Bull in 3rd place. But then a big gap back to Renault in 4th, who are pulling away from McLaren, 16 points clear now. Force India sits in 6th place, Toro Rosso in 7th, but they are tied on points with Haas, who sit 8th. Sauber in 9th, and Williams continue to prop up the table on just 4 points. That is it then for the Canadian Grand Prix review. Apologies if it does seem a little bit shorter this time. Not a huge amount to talk about, but I still wanted to get this video out for you guys. But what did you think of the Canadian Grand Prix? Did you enjoy it? Did you find it a little bit boring? And who was your driver of the day? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. I will be back tonight at 8 PM UK time for F1 Daily, and there will be another video up on the channel tomorrow. In the meantime, though, you can follow me on social media. Links to Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and to Discord are all in the description down below. But as ever, thank you for watching. I've been Sean. This has been the F1 Word, and until next time, goodbye.